Okay, we're back. This is the first episode I've actually recorded in a couple months, but I'm here with Lindsey Feliciano. Is that correct?
Feliciano.
Cool. Lindsey is one of our oldest family friends. You taught me in daycare, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you taught me in daycare, and then she babysat both me and my brother, and so we've stayed in touch for a really long time, and you currently teach elementary school special ed, right?
Yes.
Cool. And so we're going to talk primarily just about education. I've got a list of a bunch of topics that we can bounce around as needed, or we can just stick on certain topics for an hour. And so we'll go for an hour and a half, and then just see where it takes us. So just off the bat, is there anything in general? I know we wanted to start with just how COVID in general has impacted your time, your personal experience as a teacher.
Right.
But so I guess at first, just general takeaways from COVID. How has the last year and some change been? What has been different? And I'll just start there.
Okay. Well, I'll start with just saying that what we talk about here is just my own personal opinion and my own beliefs and thoughts. I don't represent the district or anything with any of this. So, when COVID started, I was teaching emotionally disturbed students. So I had behavior students. And when you go to online only, it's really hard to get them to engage and to sign into your Zooms or your WebExes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're behavior students for a reason. A lot of times they don't even really want to be at school, or because of the challenges they have academically, on top of their behaviors and their emotions and stuff like that. So to get them to even log in and to do any of the work was a struggle, because they also had their parents at home that were working from the house, so they couldn't really sit there and make sure that their kid was logging on and doing things. So we did the best we could with that. Last year was a little better since we had students in person. The first 3 weeks of school, we were all still online. And I moved to a different district, so I wasn't in Grand Prairie anymore. And there was a little better with the parent involvement and the parents making sure the students were getting online and working. And we would still do social group and social skills and stuff, so to help them. So it was better. I had all my kids in person after that first 3 weeks of school. So
Okay.
It's
Wait, and so that's the first 3 weeks last fall?
Last year.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Was that an exception that was made specifically for special ed, or was that across the board?
No, across the board. So all students didn't start until after Labor Day.
Okay.
They started in August, but we were all just online. We were remote at that point. And then after Labor Day, is when they could come in person. So all my kids came in person. I had 3 in my class. At that time, I taught the students with autism. So they were there working, and it was good. Last year it was okay. We had to quarantine 3 or 4 times, so then that kind of takes them back and forth. And working with kids with autism, it has their routines. They're very regimented in their routine, so to go back and forth, it was always a struggle when they come back. We would have to kind of go back over classroom expectations and all that stuff and kind of get them back in the swing of things. So learning definitely took a hit. I will say. But in last year the parents had a choice. So their kids could stay remote all year. Mm-hmm. Their kids could come in person and then go to remote. If they started remote, they couldn't come back in person until the next 9 weeks. So if a parent chose to pull their kid out and do remote, then they were like, oh, well, no, I want my kid to go back in person. They would have to wait till that 9 weeks period was up. So it was still a lot of back and forth last year with just gen ed kids in general. And just holding the kids accountable to getting the work done and stuff when they were online was difficult.
were there any over the year, were there any positives, or were there any policies that were implemented during COVID that you liked, or that would be good to implement going forward, or was it mainly just kind of a hurdle to get over?
It's definitely been a hurdle.
Yeah.
We're still there with, we have a lot of kids behind, a year behind, 2 years behind, just because that when COVID hit, the expectation for the district I was in at that point was as long as they turn in at least one assignment a week. It didn't have to be one assignment in every subject.
Yeah.
Then they would pass.
Okay.
So they could get on a Monday and turn in an assignment, and then they wouldn't have to do anything the rest of the week. So they tried to have it where, if we saw them in a WebEx or a Zoom, that's how we took attendance, so they could show up for one Zoom, and that would be the attendance for the day.
Yeah.
So, I didn't really like that part of it, because we knew that our students, and I worked in a socially, economically disadvantaged district.
Yeah.
So those kids were already struggling at home with, a lot of our kids would go home and raise themselves, because parents had 2 or 3 jobs. Or the older sibling was raising the younger siblings, and they had to make sure that, because either mom or dad's out of the house before the kids even get up, and they're, so there was a lot going on at home too. And that was part of our problem with, the older kids having to do their own work and making sure their younger siblings, because mom or dad is working in the house but has put it on the other students, or the other kids to do. So
yeah, I heard my coworkers were talking about how that even now, I think if there's a snow day now, or maybe it might also be if their kids are sick. I don't remember if it was definitely applied to snow days, because I made some comment in the office about we lost power or something. I'm like, oh, it was in school, you just got to go and you didn't have to make it up. And they're like, oh no, now with the basically with Zoom and everything, even on snow days, it's kids are still expected to check in. Do you think that's I don't know, for me, as a former student, I'm like, dang it, that would suck.
Yeah.
No, come on, you gotta still let them have the snow days.
Technology has definitely helped in that situation. But last year, when we had a whole week off because of snow and ice, and they weren't making us do any online teaching or anything, because we knew ahead of time that we probably weren't coming to school the next day, and it would be a while, at least that week that we weren't coming. But they said no, we didn't have to, get on and do any of that. So, but I mean, there are things that we can do to get on.
Yeah. Do you think it's had a bigger impact on students or teachers?
I think both.
Yeah.
I mean, just this year with House Bill 4545, I mean, the kids that didn't pass STAR, which was a lot of kids last year, they have to get an additional 60 minutes of instruction per subject that they didn't pass.
Okay, so what was House Bill 4545?
That's what that is. So
if they don't pass,
if they didn't pass STAR last year. So for example, my daughter, she didn't pass science or math.
Yeah.
So now she has to have an additional 60 minutes per subject outside of the instructional day.
Jeez.
School day.
Yeah.
Of tutoring.
Okay.
And so she stays after school 1 day a week for science, and then they are able to work in with the study hall that they have.
Yeah.
Or they just can't include it in their instructional time, like pulling small groups, steering, reading, that doesn't count. So she has an extra hour that she gets math throughout the week or whatever. And it's supposed to be small groups, so, no more than 3 or 5 kids. Well, that's a lot of kids right now, because there's a lot that didn't pass. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it on the news with the STAR scores and all that stuff. Everyone's struggling, because the kids didn't, that year of COVID, they either participated and they learned, or they didn't participate at all and didn't. I have kids that that I work with now that are 2 and 3 grade levels behind.
Okay.
I would have loved to okay, that whole COVID year is a wash. Everybody just stay in the grade that you were at.
Yeah.
And, our pre-K and kinder classes would have been overwhelmed because the little 5-year-olds coming in and keeping the rest of them in, But, I mean, just, and it takes a toll on the kids' self-esteem and the kids, they're what they think they can do and their worth. And so it's hard to see them struggle knowing that, the impact of COVID has had on them academically. Before COVID, they could have been just a little bit below grade level or on grade level, and now they're far behind. So teachers are having to get all these kids caught up.
Yeah.
Plus teach grade level material and hope that they, get it.
And do you think most kids are, is that something you can catch back up in a year? Or does it just depend? Does it vary kid by kid?
I think it depends, kid by kid. I think it depends on the kid and their determination to get caught up. Some kids don't even have they haven't had a good school experience since they started school, because they're either behind or they don't feel like they can learn. So they just kind of shut down, or some kids are lazy, and they don't have the help at home, sometimes the parents, you can send home homework and you can communicate with the parents, but they're not gonna, and they'll respond, but the kid still doesn't do any of the work. So, I just think that, having both the parents, kind of on the bandwagon to help, but that's another issue.
Yeah. I think we'll get to something like that down the road.
Yeah.
But so, I'll table that for a second. But then I was thinking, what is one thing or in your experience as a teacher, what is one thing that you think the modern education system is doing well, and what is one area specifically where you think it could improve? As far as I don't know, I feel like with my friend group and my generation, I think most people are more critical of either just people will say obviously millennials or Gen Z, they'll be very critical of that generation, but then also people will be very critical of just the modern education system. So they'll say, well, hey, we only teach to certain tests, or so people don't learn anything, they just learn how to pass a test, or it's a lot of busy work, or it's I don't know, but maybe other critiques like that. In your experience, what's one thing that there's got to be both pros and cons, and so what is one thing that you think we're doing well, and what is one thing that we really need to improve?
I think, there are schools that have different programs to help those kids and those students that excel really well, to kind of help them. So, I think keeping those programs are important. There are some teachers that teach to the test.
Yeah.
Every school district has a curriculum that the teachers need to follow. But there are teachers, they're starting to talk about how, kids passing the test may affect the teacher's pay if they don't pass or whatever. So I think that's a lot of fear that it's been put into the teachers, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be paid based off your scores, because you can teach. You can be a great teacher and you can teach, but if the student's not buying in, or the student's not willing to put forth the work and have the support behind them, whether it's at home or in the school, then it's going to be hard for them to, I don't think putting money on your paycheck's based off of if your kids did good in STAR. And STAR is only 3rd, 4th, and 5th in middle school, high school. So what about the pre-K, kinder, 1st, and 2nd grade teachers? Yeah, for sure. They don't have any state assessments that, their kids have to, or that they're held accountable for their kids passing. So that's kind of would be one thing. I would be okay just kind of doing away with the test altogether. Really? I think it's stressful for the students. I think it's stressful for the teachers because this first semester, you're teaching and you're, the stress is there, but it's not as bad as when we come back from Christmas. Yeah. Come January, it's like, oh, we only got 2 months. We got to start just cramming all these strategies, which
and you're talking specifically about like the STAR tests, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
You got to cram all these strategies and teach them how to do this and that, which you should have already been doing from the first semester. But so that's, that would be one thing that I would say.
So what is the STAR test supposed? I don't know. Like I don't know when it was. It's basically Texas's standardized test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what is it supposed to accomplish? Is it supposed to set? Does it determine gifted, talented? Does it determine if you get to move on to the next grade? Does it determine if you're learning what you're supposed to be learning? Like, what is the goal of having standardized tests?
Yeah, it doesn't determine gifted and talented. That's the COGAT test that the kids take. But so it doesn't determine if they move on to the next grade until you're in 5th grade.
Okay.
So, and that's only with math and reading. So they have to pass math and reading in order to advance to the next grade. So if they fail it the first time, they get 2 times in school to take it. But if they fail it both times in school, then they have to go to summer school. And then at that point, if they still fail it in summer school, then there's a committee that comes together and say, okay, well, do we think that this student, and they could still not pass it and move on, but it's not very likely that they do. It kind of depends on the student's drive and how much they've put forth. And so there's sometimes kids will be held back just because, the school year proved that they didn't, know. They could pass all their classes and not pass STAR and have to be held back. So it does determine the next grade level, but not till 5th grade. Like 3rd and 4th, pretty much, if you pass or don't pass, you're going to go on to the next grade level as long as you.
So what pass. And then also, is it just is it just pass fail, or is there are there other differentiators? And then if it's not, if the primary focus is not to determine grade level, what is the goal behind having it?
Yeah, that's
Is it just like this is the curriculum that they should be learning, and this is a general assessment of like if the school or if the teachers are in theory, right? Even though it may not
and
be.
It's all based off the TEKS and the standards and stuff. So if it's if you're teaching the TEKS and the standards, then they should be able to pass the test. If that's, the test is just based off of the curriculum, and of course all school districts have their own curriculum. It's not the same curriculum across the state of Texas. They buy into different, people that, there's different people out there to offer their curriculum, and hey, mine's the best, or, it's just who they buy into. Yeah. For the district. So. Yeah.
So, okay, so if and then also, okay, so when I think of standardized tests, I also think of like the SAT, ACT, I don't know what else. The PSAT?
That's just, PSAT is just more for like 7th and 8th graders, like before they get, or 9th graders even.
Would you lump those into the same category as STAR? Or are you like specifically thinking like, hey, like STAR is like in a category of its own? Like if you're sitting there saying like, hey, like if maybe it would be better if the standardized test went away. Would you include the high school level standardized tests as well? Or like the AP, I don't know if AP is not standardized, but AP tests or stuff like that.
I think those are important just to see that, if you're college ready. That's more of a determining if you're ready to go on to college and that you've got what you know. STAR is just something to make sure that you're getting the standards you're supposed to be getting in elementary school or middle school and high school. So I'm okay with having the SAT and the ACT and all that other stuff. But STAR's not going to determine if they go to college.
Yeah, for sure.
College is a different part of, doing the ACT and SAT. That's like moving on in your life and so this actually like a stepping stone going in. Yeah.
And so this actually probably could go in a bunch of different directions. So hopefully I'll try and keep it tied in later. But so 2 follow-ups then. I think they're related. Is one, what do you think the purpose of elementary school is? Like what should be the main purpose of elementary school? And depending on what that is, if if the measurement is not a standardized test, which is, I think a lot of people would probably say at best that's an imperfect measurement, and a lot of people would say get away with it or do away with it altogether. But if that's not the measurement, like, what is there an alternative? Like, how should success for either students or teachers be measured?
So, okay, for elementary, I say for the younger kids, pre-K, kinder, second, that's just, you're teaching them how to be social.
Yeah.
And how to act in social settings and how to get along with other people. And learning and teaching is great, but these kids need their social skills, and they need to know how to function in a setting where there's other people that maybe aren't like them, or that, they need to know how to handle agreements and disagreements. They need to, and conflict and stuff. So for sure, those younger years are for sure, more about the social aspects. And there's a lot of they do a lot of play, like centers and stuff like that in the younger grade levels. Yeah. You get to 3rd, 4th, and 5th, hoping they already have the social foundation, and they're able to, handle their differences and with respect. But that's more where the academics come in. It's definitely a big jump with your standards from 2nd to 3rd grade. It's a lot harder. Yeah. So those kids do tend to struggle, and when it gets harder, they do tend to have a little more emotional outbursts and stuff like that. So elementary and the upper grade levels would probably be more of the academics and more learning how to problem solve at that point. You have your social aspect with the younger kids, but the older kids is more problem solving, like, okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's a lot of problem solving activities and projects and stuff. It's more projects and things like that, definitely in 5th grade too. Yeah. So
so then in the later elementary school, how should success be measured? Or like I don't know, if all of a sudden if we put you in charge tomorrow and it was like, okay, you're going to fix everything that's broken, how should it be measured?
I don't want that responsibility, but
because when Emily and I have always talked about standardized tests, and I guess when I always in my mind thought of standardized tests, I thought more of like, and I probably had the definition wrong, because I would think of more like high school ACT stuff like that, and then I would think of just tests in general, where I'm like, oh well, you got to have tests, because even if that's not the best way to measure it, at least then you're teaching students that, hey, you've got to prepare for this thing, and it may be a little stressful. It may require some like preparation in advance. Like you may sit down and be nervous to take it, but you've got to overcome that hurdle. And then also, this thing should encompass what we've been teaching for the past week or 4 weeks or half a semester. So to some degree, maybe that's not the best way to teach every student, but at least it's something. But I can definitely sit there and acknowledge that maybe there's something just generally better out there that we're missing. And then, when you talk about like a STAR test or a TAX test, I forget what it was in California. Was it TAX here?
TAX was here. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what Missouri was. But for those type of tests, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But what would be what should the bar be, or what should the metric be for like late elementary school, early middle school, once you actually start getting into the learning aspect?
Right. I definitely would say, there needs to be testing, but maybe not standardized. When I was taught in the classroom for 7 years before I went into PE, and then I went into SPED. But, it's like you said, you teach for, you teach 1 or 2 units, and then they have a test on it. And if they mastered that test, then, and then I would say even in 5th grade, let those kids have midterms, started in 5th grade. Because really 5th grade, they start working towards, hey, this is how it's going to be in middle school. This is what they talk, the talk is in middle school. This is, teachers are going to, expect you to turn this in and do. So they kind of, place more of the responsibility to get them ready for middle school. So, I think that just having the midterms and having the weekly tests or every other week tests, to make sure they've, comprehended the units that they're learning or that they've been studying and working on. I think that's, to me, that would be sufficient. Yeah. That's really what I had in high school. I know that was a long time ago. But, we had it. But yeah, I mean, I took, before tax, it was TOS. I mean, it was the TOS test. I mean, I had standardized tests, but it wasn't something that we stressed out about. The teachers didn't stress out about it. The teachers just taught.
Yeah.
And then we took the test and we knew the information because they just taught. They weren't stressed out. We weren't being taught strategies and basically on how to answer this type of question, or if you see a question like this is what you want to do. To me so that's what the teachers stress out about when it comes to January. It's like, okay, if you see a question like this is what you're going to do. You're going to go back here. You're going to, it's like...
Well, and to me, I even got that. I felt like I got that a lot in high school and college. Because when I was young, I loved school. Mm-hmm. I loved school. And then I can remember when I started, really starting to dislike it. In late high school and even a lot in college, it was so much that was just focused on... for me, it was like, I literally can put in minimal effort and I can learn how to pass this test without learning anything about the class or without learning. And it's like that part, that sucks. That's the worst. Yeah. And so I don't know, the reason I asked, what is the purpose of school is because I think, and I may be misremembering, but it felt like when I was Emily and I have joked about this before, but it felt like when I was younger, it was always the purpose of school is to prepare you for the next school. And then you get into high school, so elementary school is middle school is going to be different. And the middle school, high school is going to be different. And then you get into high school and it's all about college and the real world. And it's you get in the real world and it's I don't know. It was like this.
I didn't need anything that they were telling me.
Yeah, and it's I don't, to me, and this may be super naive and obviously not coming from a teacher standpoint, but to me it's the purpose of, I don't know, I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about it. It's the purpose of school should be to teach kids how to learn and why learning is important, and then and to identify. Maybe elementary school is, I think what you mentioned about the socialization aspect is super important.
Yeah.
But then it's and then once you get past that, the initial of just being around other kids, at some point it's got to be hey, every single kid has some talent, and how does the school system pull those talents out and get the kids to identify oh, I really love history, and that's why, and that's something I can pursue, or I'm really into math, or I'm really into. You mentioned that your son is doing, it was cybersecurity elective.
Cybersecurity,
that stuff's really cool. And so I don't know. That's why I was curious. Just to me, it felt like every time I was in school, it's oh, this is just preparing you for the next school, and I'm or there was a lot of preparing for the test, and that was my least favorite part of school. Is it's well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think, I'm a very realistic teacher. I tell my kids all the time, when you get out in the real world, this is how it's going to be. I feel like that's a lot with schools just needing to teach the kids, hey, it's not going to be like this when you get out there. And so, but it's like what you said, teaching them how to learn and how to find something that they're good at and kind of capitalize on that. As far as schools recognizing that and pulling it out of them, I don't really see a lot of it. You might have it kind of depends on the teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, some teachers they're just teaching and doing, waiting till they can retire.
For sure.
There's other teachers there that do see that, and they do say, hey, I know another teacher that's really good at this, and let me set you up with that teacher, and y'all can, or some teachers will even go out and find resources outside of the school, out in the community, and talk with the parents and stuff. So that it has to do with the teacher and how much they're willing to invest in that student. And all teachers should be there for the students. I can tell you there's some teachers that are not there for the students.
Yeah.
But
okay, so wait, and this is, and again, we don't have to get any specifics at all. But if you've got I would assume most people who teach are there for students, because obviously, especially right now, teachers don't get paid super well, and so it's probably not for the money. And so, what if in your opinion, what are some of the most common alternative reasons that people would teach if it's not for the students, if that makes sense?
Well, they always say to have the summers off, which we don't get the summers off.
Yeah.
We still have professional developments, and we're doing trainings all summer. But they'll say the summer's off, get out. You think they go from 7:45 to 3:30, and they're out, and they have, early, the late afternoon into the night. And but that's not necessarily the case. And that's what you'll hear. People will be like, oh, I want to teach so I can have the summers off and I can go on vacations and I can have, this many weeks at Christmas. And, but, some teachers are just doing it as a stepping stone and knowing that they want to go, maybe somewhere working with kids or helping kids, but not in like an actual school setting. So I have my diagnostician license. Like I can go out of the school. The diagnostician is the one that tests all the kids to see if they qualify for SPED or certain things. So, I mean, I have that, but I like being with the kids and I like being in the classroom right now. But I do have that I can fall back on if I do get to a point in my career where, I've been teaching 18 years, so, I'm sure at some point it'll be, okay, I'll just, a diagnostician sits in the office and pulls kids and tests them. So, it's not dealing with the classroom or having to really deal with the parents until, it comes to like the meeting part and, if their child qualifies or not. But, so, I mean, there's some definitely, and you can tell the teachers that are there for the right reasons and the ones that aren't, but it's sad. The ones that aren't there for the right reasons, it's kind of like, why are you here? Sometimes they'll target different kids or, they have different things that they, I don't know, do. They don't teach. Maybe their teaching isn't as well because they're not really in it.
Yeah.
So.
And so then going all the way back, or going a little bit back to, again, just to play devil's advocate a little bit with the removal of standardized testing. If you remove, because I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, so if you remove, I would agree. I think if that's not a good metric, then okay, for a good teacher, taking that away and just, hey, like, oh, it'd be great to have it where you teach kids like how to learn and you identify their strengths. But like, what if you've got a teacher who doesn't really care that much or is just like, oh, you can do whatever you want, does that then like lead to an environment where kids learn nothing, if that makes sense? Like, for example, if you've got teachers that are maybe not in it for the right reasons or don't do it, like, does that lead to the other extreme where you could have like classrooms where it's like there's just no investment from the teacher if there's nothing to work towards, or if there's no external pressure on like, hey, you have to meet this bar? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it could it could be really bad, or I think it could be really good. The pressure's off of them. Yeah. So now they're able to use their creativity and make these lesson plans.
Yeah, for sure.
Their lesson plans are written for them.
Yeah.
And it's scripted. A lot of these teachers, a lot of our districts have scripted lesson plans. And, you have these teachers that can think outside the box and think of a different way of teaching it and still get it, in a fun way and get it across to the kids the way they, that it's supposed to be. Then you have other teachers that are, this is what I have to do. So it's like just reading from, a piece of paper and, this is what we're going to do today and this is how we're going to do it. So, I definitely think that it would be, it could be really bad, but it also could be good. It could take the pressure off those teachers to give them that ability to be able to create their own lesson plans or their own projects or their own, some teachers want to do more group work and more, cooperative learning with other students and, but.
And do you think the majority of teachers would flourish under like that new system?
I think they would.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they would just to have that stress off of them and not the pressure of, the TEA and all that stuff. But I think that, it'll be a while. They've talked about, getting rid of the STAR test, but I don't see it happening, anytime soon. So the pressure is going to be there at least for the next, I would say 5.
Well, and so again, and I guess I never thought, because it's funny, like, you can talk from a non-teacher's perspective, you can talk and have all these, like, fun ideas about school, and then I realized I don't know anything about it, because I was just thinking, how do teachers, or what is the most common way teachers currently get measured for success? Is it the STAR test for most teachers? Or, like, what is the metric if, I don't know, like, if y'all have, like, year-end reviews, or if y'all go in and, like, what is the bar?
So we have the T-test, and that's something that the administration does. So you have the teachers have the T-test, and that's where your administration comes in and does like a formal observation.
Okay.
They stay in your class for 45 minutes. They watch you do a lesson and teach a lesson, and they have different criteria that they have to check off and it ranges from proficient to distinguished. So that's how we get scored as far as like our teaching and
and so are they looking specifically for like how well you teach a specific lesson plan, or are they looking for like how engaged the class is or how well behaved the class is, or all?
It has to do with classroom management. It has to do with your lesson. It has to do with even redirecting kids that are off task and how you handle that. How you deliver it, if you incorporate technology, if you don't. It's just there's a whole list of things that they check off, and then obviously they kind of circle back to parent involvement and parent communication and all that stuff. So that's how we get. Then they do walkthroughs. The walkthroughs they can post it for you. And really that's just like a 5 or 10 minute. They come in just to walk through, just to see. You don't know they're coming. Just to see kind of what you're doing and how the class is, what's going on in the class at that time. So they can do that throughout the year, but there's one 45-minute observation.
Okay.
And then you have like a pre-conference before that to talk to the principal or the assistant principal, whoever your administrator is for your T-test. And then you'll have a post-conference to talk about what happened or how it could have gone better or what you thought went well and stuff like that. So.
Huh. And do you think that's that seems like a good-ish system? Is that like a pretty good way of evaluating?
Yeah.
Because like it seems like to try and get a full picture of like, obviously again, like test scores are good, but if you can get a full picture of like, well, okay, if test scores is one thing, and then like, hey, how does this class actually function with the teacher? And like actually having someone involved in that seems like a pretty good way to measure it.
They do an informal where you kind of tell them when you want them to come. So of course. That one to me is like, okay, of course they're going to, be teaching to the best of their, because they know you're coming, they know exactly because you tell them what you're going to be doing, you give them the lesson plan. But the formal one, they'll tell you, they have to tell you like, hey, between this date and this date. Yeah. So you know what week maybe it's coming, but you don't know what day or what time they're coming in. So you have to be prepared so it's kind of not to catch them off guard, but to make sure that they're, just because they did really good on the informal observation, that they're still teaching that way all like every day like that. It's not, they'll tell you it's not to say it's an I got you, because it's not. I mean, the administrators I work with are great. They're not trying to like come in and find something to mark us down on, but but they're also good at giving us good feedback and saying, hey, or directing us to somebody in the district that could come in and help, or especially with first year teachers. First year teachers coming out, they have somebody that's a mentor for them that first year, and especially if they're in like special programs, like kind of what I do. We have people that'll come and help them with that specific program and help them with that curriculum and stuff like that.
And do the majority of teachers feel like, because this is another thing I was always curious about, because when I was growing up, a lot of the teachers and a lot of the classes I remember the most were, like, for example, I had a history class, and I don't think I'd tell you anything about the class, but I remember that one portion of the class was we had a unit where we did a class-wide for, I think it was a semester. We used to call it maybe quarters. I don't remember what it was. But for an entire unit, we basically played a class-wide game of Risk using like the map of Japan. I don't remember if we were doing a Japanese unit or what we were doing, but you essentially split up into teams and doing your homework and how you scored on your homework, taking tests, how you scored on those would all function in basically giving you little army pieces. And so then throughout the quarter, it was basically an interactive and then continuous basically game. Right. And that was a ton of fun. And I had one class where we had an end of year project where we were given $1 million, and we had to factor in sales tax and everything. We had to buy X number of items, and for every cent we were off, of the ultimate million, we got deducted that on our grade. And so it was like this project that was teaching us, hey, how to balance sales tax and how to like do research and stuff like that. And so like, I'm trying to think. I just think of probably a million other ones. But then I was thinking about stuff like that. I'm like, but okay, so how hard is it to balance getting creative? Or like, do most teachers feel like they have the room to get creative with stuff like that? Or do most teachers feel like they're kind of constrained by what they have to teach, if that makes sense?
I think it's probably half and half. I think there are those teachers that like the creative part and they do the creative part, and then there's the other teachers that are like, yeah, but I really got to make sure I hit all this stuff, and I'm afraid if I have too much fun or if I'm too creative, I'm going to skip over this certain standard or this certain teak that, you know. I think that, you know, I definitely think probably more teachers would like to have more project based like that. I mean, but see what you did or what you said with like the risk type game, you're learning. And
exactly.
Kids would love to learn more through game. Like these days, it's music, but with music, with games, it's very. These kids are a lot more. They want more hands-on stuff, and it's hard to teach that with knowing that you have a test where they're going to have to sit still for 4 hours and take a test. Yeah. And even if it doesn't take them the 4 hours, they still have to sit there for the 4 hours because in a classroom with other kids that are still testing and they don't test and finish all at the same time. Yeah. So it's kind of, you know, a double-edged sword, I guess. You want to do it this way, but then you know in the back of your mind, you know, come April, they're going to have to be able to sit still, and it's not going to be all through, you know, you're not taking a test game-like. It's not going to be a game to take the test. You know, we're not doing double Jeopardy or, you know, all this stuff. We're not playing Jeopardy to see if we can pass the STAR test, you know. So,
and ultimately, I think a lot of people, maybe this is more common to my generation, a lot of people, and probably myself included, they think of like the test as like the bad school, and like the project is like the good school. And it's like, I definitely agree with parts of that, but also like the tests are important because at maybe it's not fourth grade, but at some age, like you have to start learning how to, like not how to sit still, but how to sit still and behave, and also be committed to one task for X number of hours, or like just totally focus your brain on, hey, I've got to solve these problems, and I have a time constraint, because regardless of what line of work you ultimately get into, like there's always going to be some, like, it's important to have that element of hard work and overcoming something that is difficult and maybe not perfectly natural to your strength. Right. So it's both. Yeah, it's both. But yeah, I just think, sorry.
I mean, I say, a good balance of, you know, the playing to learn and the, you know, the other, you know, sitting and learning and learning how to do all that. It's a good balance, and there's some teachers that have that balance, and some teachers, you know, are only sit and learn and do. And then there's others that just want to do the play through the play, and then, you know, so it's hard to, I mean,
of the two extremes, do you think one's better than the other by chance? Usually with extremes, probably neither one's better, but I'm just curious if like you have a default towards one, or if one's better at a certain age group and one's better at another age group.
Yeah, I would say probably more the certain age group. The younger kids would have the more play, but the older kids still like to play and they like to have fun. But it just kind of comes down to age and you know what grade level they're on. You know, it does get more intense the older you get, because like you said, we're preparing for life outside of high school and college, and, you know, life in general and work. But they do have to have that balance. I think they need the balance of, hey, we can have fun and do this. And I was that way with my kids. I was, you know, we played and had fun and had a good time, but they also knew when it was time to sit down and work, it was time to sit down and work. So it's setting that expectation in your classroom too. So there's some teachers that, you know, they like to play and they have a good time and they teach through it, but then when it's time to sit down, the kids, the classroom management isn't there. Like the kids they don't have that expectation, so they're still cutting up and cracking up, and the teacher's trying to get them to pay, you know, focus and pay attention, but they, you know, that expectation hasn't been set from the get-go.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's
this, I guess, is sort of sort of related, sort of switching gears, but sort of related. Do you know, this is another thing I'm interested in with like social media and stuff like that. Do you notice with younger kids especially, do you notice like has been at all been a change both for the, I guess in my assumption would be, is there a negative change with like attention span, and then is there a positive change with like the ability to adapt or be creative or to grasp technology, if that makes sense, or even stuff I'm not thinking of? Is there anything that you've noticed that's unique with that? I hear a lot of complaints about like about generations and stuff like that, so I was just curious.
Social media is definitely something that has messed with the kids, and I think that's if you give them something on the iPad, they're more apt to do it and more willing to do it and try than giving them paper pencil.
Really?
So this year, actually, it'll be the first year that the STAR test will be online for everyone. There's no option of paper and pencil, which I don't like. I like paper pencil. Yeah. So definitely social media, and the things that the kids have access to these days is just if it's not filtered or censored with through the parents and controlling it that way, then there's a lot of things that some kids see that they shouldn't be seeing until high school. But just with my kids, they're constantly wanting to be on their phone and watching something or watching, it's like they don't have the, if I make them get off their phone, they get mad, and it's like, no, go outside, go play. Like, I don't understand that, it's just, we're creating sedative lifestyles for, kids that just come home and play video games all day and, don't have any, they don't go outside, they don't,
for sure.
And it messes with their social aspect too, like my son, he doesn't ever ask to go play with friends or hang out with friends, but he's like, oh, all my friends are online, I play with them online. I'm like, well, but are they your friends? Like, you don't want to go out with, it's not like y'all are trying to meet up at movies or football fields or basketball courts to play. Y'all are just online talking to each other and yelling at each other at that point. But
well, I've even noticed that with my friends, where it's like I still have friends where it's like, man, it's like it seems like all we ever do hangout wise is hang out on like a game, and in one sense, like that's great because you get to hang out maybe more often than you would otherwise. But in the other sense, it's like it makes your friendship feel like one dimensional, or it's like, we're never seeing each other, and we're never interacting with people, and we're not seeing people's body language and their cues from that regard. And Emily will laugh at me. I think this is actually funny. I always grew up texting a lot more than calling. And then when I first started working, and even I still do it, I have a weird thing where when I pick up the phone, I hate talking on the phone in front of anyone else. And so like when I started working in an office, it was genuinely like, at first when I had the option, I would like try to go other places to talk. And then I got to the point where I couldn't do that. And so I just had to get over that. And I don't know if that's just me being weird, but and I thought about it. I'm like, that may have a lot to do with the fact that I grew up and I never picked up the phone to call any friends. And I never picked up the phone. Like, I was always texting people. And so I was always more comfortable, and I still am. I'm still a lot more comfortable shooting an email than I am just picking up the phone and calling someone. Whereas like with a lot of business relationships, it's probably better, and it probably is a lot more personable to pick up the phone and talk to someone, ask them how their day's going. But I don't know, I've just been trained that way, and so I can't even imagine that kind of additional jump if with kids being like raised specifically on a lot of the Xbox games or with social media. So I was just curious.
Well, and they they don't know how to be around each other and have a conversation. Unless they're not on a headphone or texting or something. Not, I'm like you. I prefer text over talk anyway. But even with kids and they're on their gaming systems or whatever. But when you put them all in a room, it's like they don't even know how to communicate with or hang out with each other. They don't have the social part of it. They're losing social skills versus gaining them.
I was that way for a really long, I probably still am in a lot of ways, where it's a lot easier to respond to someone over text or over social media because you have time to think about like what you're going to say, and you can plan out what you're going to say, and all of a sudden you get put into you put into like a live situation, it's, oh, this is different. Like, oh man, it's I have to react quickly. And yeah, there's so much different. It sounds stupid and it sounds weird. But yeah, I was curious. So I don't know how. I had limited exposure to a lot of it growing up compared to like a lot of people growing up now, where it's so much more prevalent. And so I'm sure that's going to have effects. I'm sure there are positive effects coming from it as well. But I don't know if it's easier to focus on the negatives or what. But
no, I mean, it's good. I mean, it is teaching them, you know, how to look for resources and stuff. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, we do stuff in school where we have to use, you know, they have to do research and but we have specific programs. So they can go to, you know, they can go to Pebble Go and research something on an animal or something in history, or, you know, it's very like limited. We don't encourage our kids or tell our kids to use the internet, because what you find on the internet, you know, isn't necessarily always true. So they have, you know, all districts have specific apps for the kids to use.
Yeah.
But I mean,
yeah.
So, I mean, with the technology and stuff, it's just going to get more and more. So I think it's good and it's bad. I think it's bad socially.
Yeah.
It's keeping kids from being more social, like face to face. But, you know, they need the way the world's going, they need to know how to. No,
for sure.
Know,
yeah.
Work with technology, and, you know, my kids probably know how to work it better than I do these days.
Oh, no, yeah. For sure. Total pivot, just complete pivot. But the one before, I had a couple other things I wanted to get into, but the one other specific thing I know you wanted to talk about, and I wasn't as familiar with it. I think there are a couple of related topics, but recess, is that a hot button issue right now?
Yeah. So there's talk about wanting to get rid of recess. It's not something that a lot of teachers wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah.
The kids need that time out in the fresh air, and they need that vitamin D, and it gets them out of the school, and you know, kind of helps them running around, kind of helps them alleviate the stress that they may be feeling in the classroom or
for sure,
wherever, and gives them those social situations or those social experiences that they don't get in a classroom, because they can just run free. It's teachers are there and they're supervising, but it's not like a structured recess. Like you know, it's not like we're playing a specific game.
Yeah.
There's different things they can do. I know one of the things is up in New York, they're kind of the ones that are kind of wanting to get rid of it, but I think that keeping it is very important.
Yeah.
Movement in the classroom. We do breaks all the time, even during the day in the classroom. You know, the kids sitting and having to learn, you know, for 3 or 4 hours at a time, you lose them. You know, you lose them within the first 30 minutes. So it's usually, you know, every 30, 45 minutes, do a 10-minute, you know, break. We usually go on Go Noodle or get on YouTube and find a silly dance or something like that, just to get them, you know, up and moving, and, you know, kind of wake them up a little bit, get their energy going. But I think recess is definitely something that needs to stay in the schools. I don't think that it would benefit the teachers or benefit really anybody to, you know, they're supposed to get 60 minutes of physical activity a day anyway. So they get some of that in PE. Yeah. They go twice a week, but they get some of that in PE. But, you know, you have to have those in recesses, like about 25 minutes, because they'll, you know, we have it slotted for 30 minutes, but 25 minutes in the lineup and to come inside and stuff for lunch. But that's just, I mean, the kids need that. The teachers need it. Yeah. I mean, some of the teachers go out. I would always go out and play with the kids at recess, you know, and they, you know, it kind of helps build that, you know, relationship too. They see you outside of the classroom setting where you're not as serious. You're out there playing games with them, so it helps build that relationship with the students too. And it's, you know, students are more, they'll come up and talk, you know, I found at recess, you know, the students would come up and talk to me more about, you know, maybe things going on at home, and, you know, just more like personal. Yeah. And that's how you build that relationship, and you just kind of start learning about the student. because you don't get those opportunities a lot in class because you're so focused on, teaching, or you have all the other students and you don't, the kids don't really want to talk about it in front of everybody else. But, so yeah, I think it's a good thing to keep for both the teachers and, the students, because they need that out time.
When I first heard about that, I'm like, that sounds ridiculous. So what is the argument for?
They think that they should be learning basically all the time, all day.
Oh, gee, so this actually
it's like, it's not say let's have recess and have it and let it be structured. It's just take recess out, and they need to fill it with academics and fill it with learning and stuff. One of the districts I was in, we would have, and really I think it's the administration that can control your recess and stuff. I had an administrator that would give us 2 days of outside recess, and the other 3 days had to be structured recess. So it had to be a learning type of, so they could play games, but it had to be like learning games. And it was just, the kids, I didn't see any benefit to it. My kids, they complained more that if anything that they couldn't go outside, or that, because, kids these days are way more active, and, with whether they have ADHD or ADD or whatever, they need that time and they need those breaks, and staying inside of a school all day and not getting out to get fresh air, I think, it hurts them. Yeah.
Because, that seems crazy. Especially, we were just talking about the benefit, we were talking about the benefits of tests and then the drawback. And it's the same thing where, depending on the age, especially at earlier ages in elementary school, to me, it's like, the learning is probably the least important part of the school, where it's like, if you're talking about, socialization is really important, but for kids under 10, the most important part is just being around other kids, and they're not you're not meant to they're not meant to sit still for 40 hours at a time. They should be running around and scraping their knees and getting into stuff. And so that seems insane.
Yeah.
But I don't think I even had structured recess. I think it was just, we had recess every day, and it was an hour.
You just go outside and run around, and
That's crazy. But okay. Because then also I think that's related to, I'd never heard about the removal of recess. I'd heard about different schools looking at removing the arts, or removing PE, or removing sports, or removing gifted talented programs or stuff like that. So I'd heard about stuff like that, but I'd never heard about the recess thing specifically.
Yeah. Recess, and then what you said, GT, that's a topic. People think that the teachers are supposed to we're all highly qualified. Through TEA now, you have to be a highly qualified teacher, based on your professional development hours and things like that. So
do you think to some degree there's just too much, I don't know, bureaucracy involved in schools, as far as just trying to perfect it so much, where it's maybe to some degree the raising of kids and the teaching of kids is less complicated than it is should not be managed as much as it's trying to be managed.
Yeah.
Or am I just not?
Yeah.
Don't know
No,
what I'm talking about?
I agree with that. Removing GT is just something that, it strikes a chord with me personally, because I have a stepson who, is GT. He's very highly gifted, but he was never pushed.
Yeah.
And he wasn't pushed enough, and it got to we even moved him. He went with me to Grand Prairie when I was teaching in Grand Prairie, and ended up at Dubisky High School, which is it's one of those, what are they? It's not a trade school, but it's it's a career. Oh, it's a career school.
Okay.
And so you could go and you can get your dental hygienist stuff there.
Yeah,
you could come out with, an associate's and all that stuff. I took him there because he's engineering, and he's mechanical engineering, and he loves all that stuff, and he just wasn't pushed. If we tried to address it with teachers, or even with this GT teacher, they would just give him packets, and it was just busy work. Everything that he did in his classes, he's I've already done this. I already know this. So it pushed him to actually drop out. So he's just going to get his GED, and he's going to move on. And, you know, he's only 17, but he's going to move on and do bigger and better things because he's ready to do it. Like, he's rebuilding trucks right now. So, I mean, he has the knowledge and he has the skill. You know, so I think that they're trying to remove the GT, but because they think that the highly qualified teacher should already be teaching to a GT level, because you have to scaffold with the different kids that you have. So you got to teach the higher blooms for the gifted kids, you know, and then you have your lower level questionings and stuff like that for the you know, the other kids. But
so the theory is like you have everyone in the same class and you just address different people at different times, essentially.
You teach to all levels. You teach all the levels in the classroom. I mean, and you know, it's kind of, that would be writing, you know, you would probably write 2 different lesson plans just for one lesson, because you have you probably do more of a project based type thing with your GT kids, and then the other kids would be, you know, getting what the district wants through the curriculum and stuff like that, through the books and through the, you know, lower level teaching and questioning and stuff to help them understand it better.
Well, is that not? Well,
I mean, the district I'm in, though, they're great. I mean, they have a specific school for kids for the highly gifted, Aspire. So they do really well, and then they have the STEM school at the high school. So, you know, but not all districts buy into the whole GT thing. I mean, they have it because right now they have to have it, but. And certain kids, depending on their age, get certain amount of time in GT. So, like the younger they are, they only get maybe an hour a week in the GT program or in the GT classroom setting. The older they get, they go every day for, you know, 45 minutes or whatever every day.
And so, wait, curious, because I think you taught at 2 slightly different districts where is it common that the districts that you would say are like lower income districts also have less extracurriculars or less access to like a less well defined gifted and talented program, or less access to are those the districts that are more inclined to start cutting stuff?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. You know, it comes down to numbers and, you know, how many kids you have in your school that qualify for gifted and talented, or that, you know, can do different things. But I think the lower level or the socioeconomic, you know, those disadvantaged districts definitely have, it could be for budget reasons, it could be, you know, money, it could be different things, you know. But yeah, I think they would be more inclined to start cutting back those type of positions before, you know, a district that would, you know, doesn't have any Title I campuses or anything like that. So
what is a Title I campus?
Title I would be your socioeconomically disadvantaged kids.
Okay.
So yeah.
Huh. Okay. And then I looked down, I noticed we're like right at an hour, and so I have a lot more questions based off stuff we've already talked about, but I guess for the sake of time, I think the last item that we both agreed that we thought we'd want to talk about would be just like parental involvement. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a ton of stuff I don't think we got to, and a lot of other follow-ups I'd love to ask. But I'll close with how involved do you think parents should be in their kids' education? Because I know maybe on a higher level, recently there's been a big a national debate around these evil parents at PTA meetings so there's been that level of debate, and so you can talk about it from that sense of hey, should parents be involved on big picture how a school is run, or you can talk about it more on the individual basis hey, how involved are kids or how involved are or should parents be in their individual students' education? So they're probably even more, I don't know, there are probably even more conversations, but just thoughts on
so parent involvement is a big thing to me when it comes to the kids' education. Like I said, when you work in a economically disadvantaged district or school, you don't necessarily have the parent involvement because they're always working or they, some of those people are, on food stamps and they don't have the funds to, get extra help for their kid outside of school, or they, some of the parents, like when I was in Grand Prairie, some of the parents didn't even have a high school diploma.
Yeah.
So the kids coming home to do homework, the parents
They just didn't have any help.
Yeah, they might not, really know how to read or know how to, do the math. You also have language barriers that you get to with the ELL students and their parents. So you have that working against you with, when the student's at school doing the English part, but they have to go home and the parent needs to help them. Well, the student can translate, but, every language translates differently. And, so, but I mean, as far as academic wise, I would love for parents to, be more involved and help, their students to the best of their ability.
Yeah, for sure.
I think when it comes to parent involvement for discipline and for behavior, I think that's a big thing. Kind of holding the kid accountable, at home for things that they do at school, because if they don't, in my opinion, if they don't get held accountable at home or disciplined at home for something they did at school, then the behavior at school is not going to change.
Yeah.
And that, I see a lot of that just over the years that I've been working in the different districts and the different types of, schools I've been in and the students I've had. You have students that they don't take school seriously, but it could be that the parents don't take school seriously. So, I mean, a lot of it does kind of stem back to the parents and stem back to, how much they value education. When I was growing up, that's what you did. Yeah. You went to school, you did your job, and you came home, did your homework, and that was it. You got the grades. Yeah. I don't see school being as important to maybe some of the parents now, or to hold their kids accountable for that. Yeah. And I also think it has to do with how you were raised, and like I said, some see it as important and some don't. Yeah. But there's a limit of what school, that's again back to the whole, like, what is the role of school? Like, there's a limit to what school can do and what it should do, as far as, like, in my opinion, it's like the job of school is to teach kids how to learn and to give them to teach them how to learn and to teach them, I don't know, certain things. So at this age, you should know your times tables. At this age, you should know basic history. At this age, you should know at this age, you should know how to analyze a novel or something like that. But, like, it's not, in my opinion, it's not the school's job to provide discipline or to provide the, like, want to or the desire or the accountability necessary. That has to come from home, because, I don't know, a kid's not going to respond to just some teacher the way they would respond necessarily to. When it comes to discipline in the school, our hands are tied.
For sure.
We can't do anything. Growing up, I could get
getting whooped.
Yeah, I could get whooped at school, That's not the case. So, I mean, the only thing we give, we can give ISS or we can give OSS, for things, or, we can do lunch detention or, minor things like that. But the kids that get it, it doesn't impact, it's not fixing their behavior. Yeah. I think until we hold the parents hold their kid accountable for things that they've done. I mean, you have kids that are cussing other kids out, or maybe a teacher, or maybe even hitting a teacher, and it's like, nothing happens to them at home.
Is there anything like out of the box that you can do with kids like that? Like, for example, like, I don't know if this is like a Hollywood idea or if this is just super naive, but, like, is it a kid's not being addressed individually enough, as far as, like, hey, this kid is acting out because, like, a teacher hasn't been taking enough interest in him, or, hey, this kid's acting out because he hasn't found a good extracurricular, like a sport or an art or something to be involved in outside of school? Or is that all kind of like super, super fluffy, pie in the sky, naive, and where it's most of it's just, oh no, this kid's just acting out because that's what just kids do and they act out? Does that make, I don't know if that's even a coherent question.
No, some kids do act out. They act out because they aren't getting the attention they want from the teacher or from, somebody else. Yeah. Or one student is, the one that gets all the attention, maybe because of the behavior. So the other kids are like, oh, well, if I act like that, then the teacher will, pay attention to me. And so then it kind of becomes a battle of, who's going to behave one way or the other to get the attention of the teacher. So I don't think that it's naive, but I mean, there are things that, you can say with the kids and how they behave is, it's not all to get the attention or all. I mean, there are just some kids that just don't, have the skills to behave, and, they haven't been taught how to behave or how to approach or even talk to adults. And that could go back to the whole, cell phones and social media. They don't know how to, and it's all in, how the parents allow them to talk to them at home, and I've always told the kids, if they talk to me, differently, or disrespectfully at school, I'll be like, you might be able to talk to your parents that way, but you can't not talk to me that way. Yeah. And so, you start teaching those social, not every, you can't, at home's a different environment. You're more relaxed. You're more, so you don't know how the parents are, talking to the kids, or the kids are responding, or you don't know that. But at school, they have to be taught, how to be respectful and be, so.
And so do you have, and I think just based on how you've been talking about a lot of this, I think I would guess, do you have more parents who are over-involved or under-involved? As far as is the main problem parents who are just over the top abrasive, telling you how to do your job and obnoxious, or is the main problem parents just don't care, or they don't, or they're too busy?
I mean, no.
Or is it a healthy mix of both? So
I would, it kind of, like I said, it kind of goes back and depends on the district. The district I'm in now, the parents are very involved and very they're really good. You go into, I worked in Irving one year. I've worked in Grand Prairie and stuff like that. Those are definitely more, depending on the part of the city you're in. If you're in the higher income, those parents are involved. The lower income, you don't get a lot of involvement. They'll show up for PTA programs and stuff like that. They might not join the PTA, but they'll show up to watch their kids' programs and stuff. But you don't get a lot of feedback when it comes to having them come in for a conference, because in October we're supposed to do parent-teacher conferences and a face-to-face. Yeah. You don't always get them to come in because they don't want to. It's either sometimes it goes back to sometimes school makes them nervous, so they don't want to come in.
Oh, for sure.
And have that maybe school wasn't a good experience for them, so they don't want to come in and have that experience, or they don't want to take the time to invest in their students or their child's education, or and sometimes some parents think a conference is going to be all bad things about their kid, and they don't want to. They already struggle with their kid at home, and they know that there's but that's not really what a conference is. It's just to go over things your kid's great, this is what we're going to work on, we're going to, and I communicate with my parents on a daily basis, but I also work with students that require that communication on a daily basis. So I think it depends on the district, and it depends on the economic status of the students and how much parent involvement there is.
Yeah. What are we being chastised? No. Okay. Because I don't know, most of the context in which I've seen it recently, and you've seen it's been more a political sense of parents and we had this conversation the other day where it's I think parents should be definitely involved on an individual level. I would hope parents are involved on an individual level, and then on a bigger level, I think it's important for parents to at least care about what their kids are taught. But on the same extreme, I don't necessarily think parents should 100% drive curriculum either, because I was telling Emily, there were a bunch of books I read, especially in high school, where looking back, I would think to a lot of books, I'm man, that was a stupid book, or man, that book, the main idea or that thing that book was conveying, maybe that was a little bit dangerous, or maybe it was something that's that's a deep or maybe a messed up idea. But it's I think it's important of getting all of those ideas that if I was, as a parent, was solely in charge of, if I was presented the list of books and I got to choose this one, or this one, I may not have chosen the Native Son or the heart of darkness or the stranger that were like, because I don't care about that. And I think that for a lot of students, it's important for them to get at least the exposure to some degree to a wide range. So I don't know. I was just curious because I'd seen a lot of that, and I was just I know. I think in your experience, it sounds like it's a lot more like on an individual level, like per kid. But
yes. Oh yeah. It depends on the kid and the.
Do you have any horror stories of just parents being like way over the top involved? Is that?
There's definitely helicopter parents. And it's like, oh my gosh, you gotta cut the cord at some point, you know. You'll have parents that we used to have parents that would come in and feed their kids lunch. Like,
oh my gosh.
feed them. This would be like a third grader and the parent. I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna work. Or they come, they do breakfast in the classroom and the parent would come in and open their milk and no, we're gonna teach. No,
that's gonna be Emily.
It's like second grade. So there's definitely the helicopter parents, but it's probably, I would say there's probably more that are parents that aren't involved in the helicopter parents. So and again, it goes back to the districts. You're gonna have the helicopter parents in the districts of the higher income districts and not the lower income districts. So
for sure. Well, I think Emily was giving us the 2-minute warning. So I guess just to wrap up, is there anything? I know we touched on a lot of stuff. Is there anything that you specifically wanted to talk about, or like anything you feel strongly about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
No, we hit it.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about COVID and parents and recess and removing some stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
I think we did good.
I really appreciate you coming on
and just you having me,
being interested in coming on. And I realize I don't know a lot of this stuff, so just thanks for answering a lot of my questions. And I still have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing what you do, because obviously we didn't talk about much with salary or anything like that, but obviously being a teacher is not necessarily the most well paid thing, and dealing with kids is probably not super easy. Yeah. And so really appreciate you doing it, because I think it's one of the most necessary jobs and it's needed. So
thank you.
Thanks. And thanks for coming on. And then for our 2 listeners, I guess Emily would want me to point out that we're on Spotify and Apple and YouTube and Facebook, and I guess that's all I got. But see y'all next time.